When we talk about the war in Ukraine, then there is always one specific narrative the Kremlin tries to spread, and many Western media outlets try to repeat these narratives. And those narratives are very simple. First and foremost, it is said that the Russian Federation is nearly invincible in a modern warfare, and it's also said that the Russian Federation nearly has endless resources. Also, it's always mentioned that the Russian army in Donbass is advancing slowly but steady. So many of us get the picture that the war in Ukraine sooner or later ends in a Russian victory and in a Ukrainian defeat. But let me tell you one thing, the reality draws a different picture, cause the Russian Federation and Vladimir Putin face enormous problems, and these problems could escalate in 2026. So let's take a closer look to the Russian situation on the strategic level. Hi. My name is Alexander Korton. I'm a media manager and strategic analyst from Austria and also the founder of the German YouTube channel GEOPOL. And today we want to take a closer look at the strategic problems the Russian Federation faces in the year 2026. But let's begin with a look back to the year 2025, because already in 2025 the Russian success was absolutely minimal. Because when we read Western news channel, there is always one specific headlines they try to implement in the Russian stories. And those headlines sound like Russian advance in Donbass, Russian are nearly taking Pokrovsk, or Russian are nearly taking Konstantinivka. So for many people in the West, it sounds like that the Russian army is advancing further and further in Ukraine and that a Russian military victory is just a matter of time. But if we look closer about the facts and the statistics, then the Russian advance is a complete joke. Cause the Institute for the Study of War published an analysis about the Russian territorial gains in 2025, and Russia only captured 0.8% of Ukraine in the whole of 2025. At the same time, the Russian army lost nearly 420,000 soldiers for 0.8% of Ukrainian territory. And to put these numbers into the right context, the loss of 420,000 soldiers equals about 35 divisions. And we have to be crystal clear. Russia lost all these soldiers and all these divisions without one strategic victory. Because the northern part of the city Pokrovsk remains in Ukrainian hand, Konstantinivka is also in Ukrainian hand, and Ukrainian armed forces started a successful counteroffensive in the city of Kupiansk, and Kupiansk is now fully under control of the Ukrainians. So we see the Russian success on the battlefield in 2025 wasn't that important. And also on the strategic level there were already big problems in the Russian economy, because Ukrainian drone attacks could disable nearly 40% of Russian oil refinery capacity. And also oil tankers of the Russian shadow fleet got under attack of Ukrainian Z-drones. And Ukrainian drone attacks, together with US sanctions, laid the groundwork for a drop in the income for the Kremlin. Cause in December 2025, the Kremlin's income from the oil export dropped below the corona pandemic level. So we see in 2025 the Russian army on the battlefield couldn't achieve really strategic success, and on the strategic level and the economic level Ukraine had big success in crippling Russia's oil industry. But in 2026 all these problems could intensify for Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. First, we saw already in January 2026 that the Russian Federation loses important strategic allies. So was the dictator Nicolas Maduro from Venezuela an important ally of Vladimir Putin, and Venezuela played a crucial role for the shadow fleet of the Russian Federation. But also in Iran, Vladimir Putin could lose strategic partners with the mullahs. Because Iran played a crucial role for the Russian defense industries, and many drones, especially attack drones like the Shahed, came from Iran. But that's not all, cause also on the battlefield the Russian army could face serious problems. Cause Ukraine was able to build modern fortifications behind Pokrovsk and the first Donbass line. And if the Russian army succeeds in Pokrovsk, after Pokrovsk there waits a modern defense line from Ukrainian forces. And those defense lines are a big problem for the Russian Federation and for the Russian army. because they could increase the Russian losses in Ukraine while they could decrease the Ukrainian losses in the war. This is why Ukraine uses more and more drones in its fortifications, and not only flying FPV drones but also ground systems. And this tactic is successful, and we also saw that in 2025, because Commander-in-Chief Oleksandr Syrsky said that Ukrainian losses in 2025 decreased by 13%, while the Russian losses increased already in 2025. And in 2026 this development could just only increase further. And also on the economic level, Russia faces 2026 enormous problems. Many analysts speak about a bank collapse by the end of 2026, and also the National Wealth Fund should be empty by the end of 2026. So in conclusion, we can say no, Russia is not an invincible force, and yes, Russia can be defeated by Ukraine. Of course, Ukraine also has problems, but we see that the Russian Federation faces enormous difficulties in 2026. And to be the biggest country in the world does not mean anything, and to have unlimited resources means also nothing if you don't have the money to use these resources. And we see in Russia right now that they are running out of money. Because in November and December 2025 the Russian Federation already had to cut the bonuses for a contract with the military. And the bonus payments will further decrease in the year of 2026, so the Russian Federation will find less and less soldiers for its war in Ukraine, because the money decreases and decreases. So we see Russia faces enormous problems on the military basis, on the tactical basis and on the strategic level. And if these problems increase enough, then the Russian Federation could lose the war in Ukraine. But now it's your turn, of course. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about the situation in the war in Ukraine? Is Russia really on the brink of collapse, or does Ukraine face more problems? Let me know in the comments, I enjoy reading them. Otherwise, I will end the video here. Take care you all, and I'll see you in the next one.